family members, they do know us better than, maybe outside folks. And sometimes they kind of get the big head about that. They really think they can come in and just tell you exactly how to live your life. Zuko didn't recognize the freedom that he was granted being released from the Fire Nation. And all that Ozai could come out of this with is, you're disrespectful. Basically, don't talk to me like that. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lauren, and over here we discuss life topics by analyzing characters from popular TV and film. So you saw the title. Today we are talking about Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender, and our topic is looking for approval and dealing with toxic family. So let's get started. So Zuko is the son of Firelord Ozai and the older brother of Azula. And Zuko had an interesting upbringing. We start off with Zuko. He's banished from the Fire Nation for speaking out of turn at a war meeting. He's banished by his father, and he's now out searching for the Avatar in order to bring him back and reclaim his spot as Prince Zuko. But prior to this, Zuko had an interesting life and an interesting relationship with his two remaining immediate family members. His mother, he has no contact with her. She's been banished, and we're not really sure whether she's dead or alive. So remaining is Ozai and Azula. And with Ozai, we know that he doesn't exactly favor Zuko. He believes that he is much too weak, especially compared to Azula, and that he's disrespectful. And then there's Azula, who he definitely has a strained relationship, namely because of Ozai and instilling that competitive spirit. And he plants those seeds of discord into both of them, and their relationship just gets worse and worse and worse as the time goes on. And then he has Uncle Iroh, who's not immediate, but of course a guiding force of good in his life. But that's about it. His mother is gone, and she was really the only other source of light in his life. So unbeknownst to Zuko, his banishment is really the best thing that could have ever happened to him, because he was able to separate from that very toxic situation with those family members. And by the way, that's something that can happen often, and does happen often within these situations, is you kind of get a bit of Stockholm syndrome. You get used to a certain type of treatment, you get the opportunity to leave it, and you're not able to let go of it completely. Zuko didn't recognize the freedom that he was granted by being released from the Fire Nation at that time, because he was so focused on his honor and reclaiming what he believed belonged to him and all of these things. He wasn't able to see the good or the benefit in being able to escape all of that pressure and all of that wrongdoing that was coming out of the Fire Nation, namely Firelord Ozai, and what he was training Azula up to do as well. I mean, would you really want to be in that family? Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about how to tell if a relationship is abusive or toxic. The first thing to ask yourself is, what is the rate of exchange between you and the person that you're thinking of? When you're going into conversations and situations and life obstacles with this person, are you coming out feeling empty, filled, or are you just completely neutral when you come out? That's important to know about your relationships, because if it's that you're empty when you're coming out, there's really nothing good that can come of this. At what point are you going to be depleted from being in a relationship with this person? So that's something you need to know. When you are in a healthy relationship with someone, you want to come out filled each time you have an interaction with them. Now, I don't mean every time you're just walking, skipping away into the sunlight every time you talk to somebody, but in the sense that I'm talking to a person who is equally as interested in what I have to say as what I am interested in what they have to say. They're listening to me, they're giving me good counsel and wisdom or whatever, because they care, and we are like-minded, and we understand what we need from one another, and we are at least willing to give each other what we know we need. That's the situation and the kind of relationships that you want to have in your life. So number 2, how to tell if something is unhealthy. Ask yourself if you're able to hold each other accountable. That's a big one. No one likes to just be criticized all the time for no reason, but there should be points in time in a relationship where you're able to confront one another and say something that's bothering you, or say something that, say something about the other person that you feel is valid, and you say it in a respectful way. If they are just unable to receive it, they can't take it, they don't want to hear what you have to say, they're not about to change nothing, you don't tell them who they are, and this is the kind of rhetoric they're spelling out to you anytime you try to hold them accountable, that is not a good relationship. If we think about the example when Zuko comes back to the Fire Nation and he's about to leave and go off and help Team Avatar, that conversation he has with Ozai in the throne, well, I don't know if it's the throne room, in the underground bunker, Zuko kind of lays out his list of complaints to Ozai. Now, this is a kind of tricky one because Ozai is his dad and you don't necessarily just go and confront your parents. But just for the sake of this video and relationships in general, let's think of them on equal ground. So he lays out his list of complaints, but he does it in a respectful, reasonable way. And he has a legitimate reason to say these things. He's not just complaining out of thin air and whining and griping. He's saying things that have personally affected him, personally affected the nation, affected the world that they lived in, things that Ozai had personally done. And so he said all of these things, and all that Ozai could come out of this with is, you're disrespectful. Basically, don't talk to me like that. Everything you just said went in one ear and out the other. I'm just watching your mouth move. That's about all this is. If scarring the child's face up wasn't enough for you to know that this was an abusive relationship, then this conversation really puts the icing on the cake. So those are some ways to tell if you're not sure if you're in an abusive relationship. So what I'm going to do is give you guys 3 tips that you can use to kind of get yourself out of a situation where you're looking for approval or you're dealing with toxic family members. Okay, so number 1 is to stop looking for approval. I know that's a big statement and it's a little bit vague, but it's one of those things that you just have to do. It's going to take practice. It's going to take continually evaluating what you're doing and what you're feeling and fixing those things for it to really take effect. Where it begins is a lifting of your self-esteem. The reason that people look for approval from other people is because they feel they are not qualified enough to properly approve or evaluate themselves. So they need someone else to come in and tell them that they're good, that they're okay, that they're enough, because they themselves are unable to do it for themselves. So raise that self-esteem and understand there is no one outside of yourself that can give you anything more valuable than what you can give yourself. You have the most power in your life. Don't give that power away to other people. Don't put people on pedestals and let them be the ones to determine your value and your worth. That's your job, and it's very irresponsible of you if you give that to someone else, okay? And this is especially true if you're a person that is taking or looking for approval from people who don't hold any value in your life, or people who you don't want to be like. It's really amazing how many people take advice from people that they themselves do not want to be like. If they don't have the life that you want to have and they're giving you advice, they're likely giving it from their point of view, which means they're probably giving you the things that they did to get to where they were. So you have to be careful. And that's not to say that you can't take advice from anyone who's not in the position that you want to be. It's to say be cautious and selective about what you take in, especially from people who have not put in the work. And Zuko himself, in that same scene that I was just talking about, came to that realization. He realized that after coming back to the Fire Nation and seeing things, after he had seen the world, that he didn't want to be like Ozai. He was kind of done with that part of his life. And so he was no longer subject to the opinions and the approval of Ozai, and that freed him enough to go out and make a completely different life decision. I mean, he went completely left by fleeing with Aang, right? Number 2 is to value your own assessments. Value your own opinions. Value your own perspective. Know that the way that you think is just as meaningful and as useful as anyone else. View yourself as on the same playing field and as on the same level as any other person. You know you better than anyone else. You spent more time with you than anyone else. You know your innermost thoughts. You know what you like and what you don't like. You know what your goals and your motivations are. You have all this information, intel on yourself, and yet so many of us look outside of ourselves for someone else to assess us and tell us what's going on with us. If there is anyone that knows what is going on with you, it's got to be you. What's wrong with the way you think? What's wrong with the ideas that you have? Are you dumb? Is you stupid? Like, is there something wrong? If not, then it's time to up your confidence. A lot of time family members, they do know us better than, maybe outside folks, maybe not, but sometimes they do. And sometimes they kind of get the big head about that. They really think they can come in and just tell you exactly how to live your life. And while they can be good sources of wisdom for us, if they care about you, you are still the one that is responsible for the decisions that you make. And you are still the one that is the sole person that is going to have to deal with the outcomes and the consequences of the choices that you make. You have to live through what's going on in your life. No one else does. And so keep that in mind when you're making your choices and when you're listening to other people and when you want people of your ideas and your plans for your life. Think about how they're not going to be there when it's all said and done. And what you are thinking of is coming into fruition. They won't be there. It'll just be you. And then number 3, when dealing with toxic family members, is to either bide your time or flee. Now, I say bide your time because if you're a kid and maybe it's your immediate family that are the toxic ones, and there's nothing you can do. You're just kind of stuck there until you can move out. So instead of just kind of sitting there and suffering, I would encourage you to look for what you can glean from the situation, what you can learn, what you can pick up from these people that are around you. In Zuko's case, I really think he could have picked up more while he was living in the Fire Nation before he was banished, because Zuko was pretty far below the skill level of Azula. So I don't know if they weren't training together. I don't know what was going on that his firebending was at such a lower level than everyone else's. But what it tells me is he wasn't taking advantage of the skill sets around him. That's a way to efficiently bide your time, is to take up the talents that are there, the things that you can glean. Some of the most successful people will tell you that they had really rough upbringings, but they'll also tell you what they learned from growing up in those situations. And a lot of times they'll mention that the reason that they are so good at acting, or the reason that they're so good at whatever gift that they have that we're praising them for, is because of how they learned to manage and what they gleaned from growing up in such a weird, toxic situation. So make sure, if you are forced to stay in a situation, make sure you are picking up nuggets. Make sure you are picking up different things to help you out later on, and not just wasting your time. To be honest, Zuko could have even just watched Azula and learned to be a more cunning, calculated, manipulative person. But instead, he was much more emotional than she was. He didn't pick that up. It could have just been an extra skill he had in his pocket to pull out whenever he wanted to, but he didn't. And so the other option, again, is to flee. If you can, it's good to just get away. It's good to just get away. Sometimes situations force us to get away. Just, for example, Zuko being banished, he had no choice. He could not come back to the Fire Nation. But sometimes you might need to banish yourself from a certain situation with family. If you see that there's no changing them, they are set in their ways, they're going to do what they're going to do, it's time for you to go. And if you're having trouble leaving, then I would encourage you to look at your level of self-esteem, because what it could be is that sometimes people believe that they are deserving of the abuse that they're receiving. They don't think that they can get anything better, and so they stay in the situation that is hurting them and making them just worse and worse off because they don't believe that they can do any better. You can always do better. There is always something better out there for you, especially if you are bettering yourself in the waiting process. Always. So never get to that place of hopelessness where you feel like this is just the end-all be-all situation. I don't have any options. I can't do anything. You're never there. As long as you're living and as long as you're a productive, growing human being, then you always have the option to leave and find better. Alrighty, so that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, do all of the things. And the question for this video that I want you guys to answer in the comments: have you ever had to flee an abusive relationship with a family member? Alright, that's it, and I will see you guys in the next video.